MovieWeb.com.
So I want to begin by asking you, your part in this film
Yes.
is very much sort of a Mighty Aphrodite-ish, sort of Woody Allen, a classic kind of Woody Allen role.
Yes.
And so I was just curious, when you approach this part, how do you make it your own? How do you sort of come into it and make the character original and your own?
Well, I think, all the characters in the movie, that sort of Woody likes to deal with a lot of the same themes. You've got the neurotic writer, and I suppose the fortune teller character is a sort of substitute for the therapist. So Woody often likes to revisit similar characters and themes, so I didn't let it worry me, and I had a very strong idea when I read the sides. I didn't get to read the whole script before I got the part, of who she was and how I wanted to play her, and I just put it out of my mind his other performances that I've seen, and I hope I'm doing something different.
Oh, you definitely are.
Yeah.
What are some of the choices that you made? You said you made specific choices to make, when you first read the script. What were some of the ideas that came to you?
Well, I certainly had a very strong idea of how I wanted her to sound and to look, and I don't know if you're familiar with the singer over here called Lady Sovereign. She's like a rapper, grime artist, and I sort of borrowed her voice and way of talking and how she expresses herself. And I also really wanted to make sure that she wasn't, and as Woody was very keen, that she wasn't too annoying or unlikable, and that so she's not, because I suppose the gold digging hooker could be a sort of unpleasant character, and she's pretty vacuous as well, and he wanted to make sure that she has some redeeming qualities, and I hope I sort of imbued her with that as well. So she's sort of weirdly, for a prostitute, rather naive and innocent, I think, at least.
She's kind of sweet. She
Yes.
sort of comes off
Yes.
with a sweetness. You
Yes.
can't help but sort of like her,
Yeah.
even though she's in this position she's in.
Yeah, I like to think that she was, rather than lying, that she's sort of just reinventing her own truth, a bit sort of like a child, when a child says, "No, I didn't do that," and then it becomes a fact. So she's, rather than being devious and manipulative and sort of thinking and plotting.
So when you first come on the set, maybe the first scene that you're doing in this character, and you create all this, what was Woody's reaction? I mean, did he say anything? Did that's good?
Well, I auditioned a lot for this part, and usually Woody gives his roles to very well-known actors with a huge body of work that he's familiar with, and he wasn't familiar with me at all. So I really had to fight for it and prove I could do it, and I auditioned many scenes from the movie, and so that he said to me before we even started, "I love this character that you've come up with, and anything you want to do, change, anything you want to say, just do it." And so he gave me a lot of confidence, because he'd already seen me do a lot of it. So yeah, I think he was happy.
Yeah. So you knew it right when you came in. He knew what.
Yeah. It would be a little scary if I I imagined to just be offered the role, and you're suddenly on set, and he's like, "That's not at all how I imagined it," but he had seen me do it already, so I knew he liked what I did.
That's great. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about the relationship between your character and Alfie.
Yes.
I mean, what is it that she's looking for, that she's getting out of the relationship? I mean, is it just security? Is it money? Is it...
I think she's fond of him. I think when he there's a little scene, he proposes to her, and she's not that fussed. She's like, "I don't need you. I don't need to get married," but he wants to take care of her. And I think she's always looking for fun and a new experience, and she is fond of him, and but she doesn't give it a lot of thought, and he hasn't given it a lot of thought either. So they quickly discover that they're perhaps not so well matched.
Does she love him, do you think, in the end, or it's maybe a different kind of love?
I think it is a different kind of love. I sort of thought she's a pretty tough, strong character, and I think she'll always be okay and land on her feet. So perhaps she wouldn't let herself be so vulnerable as to fall in love with anyone. I think she loves herself most of all, and she's going to take care of herself.
Of course,
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love the way Woody sort of ends things, very open-ended
Sure.
kind of ending.
Yes.
Do you have in your head sort of an idea of where these characters kind of end up going after the film ends? In your own mind?
For my own character, as I think they'll muddle along for a bit, but I do feel that she is it's one of those people. It's, you know, like a cat that always lands on her feet, and it's going to be okay, and she can take care of herself, and she's, although seemingly incredibly vacuous and superficial and not very bright, she's street smart and savvy, and so I just feel like it's always going to be good for her.
Almost all your scenes in the film are with Anthony Hopkins.
I know, it was so exciting.
Here you are acting with Anthony Hopkins in a Woody Allen movie. I mean, nerves, it's two iconic people.
Of course, I was absolutely petrified, and I mean, yes, I was absolutely petrified. When I started working, my nerves went down a bit, but I never stopped finding the whole experience completely surreal and crazy. And, you know, even like the last day, I was like, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe I'm working with these two. But it was wonderful.
How is Anthony as an actor? He's very giving.
He is, and he's a very you know, from the work that I've seen him do, I didn't know what to expect on meeting him, but he's very kind and he's very sweet, and that really helped for me playing this part. I couldn't have been intimidated by him. The character isn't intimidated by anyone. She's very strong. She's very confident. So I really needed to feel that working with him, and
he's actually playing sort of nervous and kind of, which is different for him.
It is. You know, I suppose maybe he's playing more of a Woody type character that you've seen Woody Allen play. So that was the dynamic. So I really couldn't allow myself to feel too in awe or too overwhelmed or too intimidated, because I had the energy was that, you know, she's very confident and in control.
That's great. And then finally, just want to ask you, so many actors talk about being on a Woody Allen set,
yes,
what it's like, you know, being in a Woody Allen film. Could you talk a little bit about that?
It's like no other experience. He works in a totally different way. You do very few takes. He works very, very fast. There's very little coverage. And
you sort of just have to be on your
You
feet,
have to be ready to go. He doesn't like to rehearse at all. He doesn't like to talk about the scene. If you have an idea for something, I'd be like, oh, don't just do it. And you know, I remember once there's a scene in the gym. We did one take, and I sort of gathered myself to say at the end of the take, I think I can do that a bit better. I'd like to go again. And as I was turning round, Woody, his assistant, the camera operator, DOP are walking out of the room. And I was completely what have I done? I was like, am I going to be fired? But the day was done. And there wasn't really cut, there wasn't thank you, there was no, that's great. He did tell me, you know, weeks later, oh, you were good in that scene. I thought, I wish you told me at the time, because I was devastated. But it's just how he works. He's very focused.
Does he just know what he wants?
He knows what he wants, and he's got it. And he's too busy to. He doesn't. You know, there's not a lot of sort of hand holding. And you know, once you've got used to that, it's great. It's a great way to work, but it certainly took some getting used to.
Shakespeare said, life was full of sound and fury, and in the end signified nothing.
You will meet a tall, dark stranger.
Wow, that's exciting news.